So, how many of you think that exercise got you thinking about ideas? If you didn't think it really related to your project, you're going to have a change in thinking over time. Because what you're going to find going through the I-Corps process is that the idea that you had isn't going to work for some reason or another. It may not work for the customer segment you had in mind. It may not work because they're not the right partnerships. It may be because the handle needs to be here instead of there. In your mind and coming up with alternatives, pivots, changes to your project. So even if you didn't think it related to your project today, I can promise you by the end of February you will have made some pivot somewhere in your. Now the main focus, we're funded by a grant from the National Science Foundation. They work with a lot of science. And so what would a scientist be without scientific method? So we have to incorporate that into our training, and it's really a huge crux of the program. So even if for those of you who are not in science or engineering and may think, oh, this doesn't apply to you, it does. And we're going to go through the different elements of the scientific method, if you will, and each day when you're going through the I-Corps program. So in the scientific method is coming up with your hypothesis. Coming up with your hypothesis. So this is what you think. You don't know it for certain. It's something that you think or you thought. And in this case, we're going to look at it as, and every week we're going to ask you, what is your hypothesis? How did you test it? And what were your outcomes? So this is not, going through this process, you're not going to come out with a pitch deck at the end. You may, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is to come out with what your hypothesis is, how did you test it, and what were the results that you got out of it. And they are going to do that every single week. And every week you're going to decide, do I need to pivot or not? So the hypothesis is, and I want you to think, I've given you some sheets on your table. So there should be enough on every to start exercising this. And I want you to think about your project. Everyone here's got a project, right? We don't have anyone who's just projectless. Okay. Now I want you to think about your project and put down what you believe your hypothesis is. What is it you think? I believe this thing is going to serve a particular purpose for somebody or something or somehow and provide some sort of outcome. And I'm going to ask you this every Friday. When you come up and do your reports, your quick learnings from the week, I want you to tell me, this is what we thought, this is what we did this week, and this is what we learned. And then what direction we've changed to. going to be a short statement. Remember, it's not a pitch, it's a long statement. I have read somewhere that Einstein said, if you can't say it succinctly, then you don't know what it is you're trying to say. So if you get really verbose and wordy, figure out how to get more concise. Then we're going to test what we think. This is what we did. So we're going to test it out and see if what we thought really makes sense. So I'll give an example of one of my pet projects. I'll just be completely transparent and tell you it ended up being a no-go pretty quick. And my test was, we got a river house out on the Pungo River. Along the side of my driveway, we got bushes that grow up feet every year. They grow by feet. And they take over my driveway. And it's a lot of work to cut these. They're called Merkel bushes. They grow fast. They're really dry, and they burn quickly. My hypothesis was these darn Merkel bushes have to be a problem for other people besides me. I think if I start up a business that offers to trim down people's Merkel bushes in the state, that they will pay me money for this. That was my hypothesis. So I've identified a customer and a problem. So I had to test it. I had to test my hypothesis. And so I went out and had some conversations with other people. We refer to those as interviews. And Pamela's going to get into that, my dear friend Pamela. I had interviews. These darn Merkel bushes, a problem from other people. And could I cut them down and sell the wood somewhere? No. There are whole companies out there that trim the sides of the road, DOT pays for them, and then they sell off the refuse and make more money. And so my niche was too narrow, and I had competition, and it was a quick no-go. But that's an example. My hypothesis, my customer, and how I tested it. Is everyone done? Did you fill out your experiment? Did you work on that next box there? To test this hypothesis, I will interview, I will have a conversation, I will explore. I know Hannah, she's talked to police departments. To test her hypothesis, she's talked to police officers. Maybe you've talked to some other people. I think Pasta Group maybe has talked with doctors or somebody. So you're going to test it by talking with folks. Now, in the true lean launch method by Steve Blank, no facts exist inside the building, only opinions. So when you come up with an idea of a problem that needs a solution, what do we all do? we say that's a problem, it needs a solution, but a lot of times we'll get on the computer and say, no one else has solved this problem. I am the only one who's noticed that this is a big problem, and I have the one and only solution. In the true lean launch method that's adopted by I-Corps, you have to get out of the building, away from your computers and your phones, and talk with people face to face. You have to have these conversations. And these conversations are real important because then you can read the body language of the individuals that you're speaking with. Are they paying attention to you? Are you asking questions that they can respond to? Maybe you can tell from their response. They may say, that's a problem, but they're really saying, no, it's not a problem. So you can judge that, and it's important to get out of the office and have that face-to-face contact in your experiment or in your test. From that, we're going to find out what our results are. So the responses you get, the feedback you get from your customers, do they validate what you thought or not? Do they confirm that the problem you thought they were having is indeed a problem? Or is it a problem that is a must-solve problem? Or it's a problem that, maybe that would be nice, but it's not a big deal kind of thing? So that's going to help us in deciding what steps we go to. So in the I-Corps method, at least in the I-Corps site here at ECU, we're going to require 30 face-to-face customer interviews. It may sound like a lot. If you go to I-Corps at the national level, you get 7 weeks, 100 face-to-face customer interviews. So we've kind of brought it down to give you a taste of it. You have to do 30 customer interviews face-to-face to validate whether you think your idea makes sense or not. And you shouldn't make a decision on an N of 1, having an interview with one kind of customer, because individuals have different perspectives. But you should have several conversations with each of these different customer segments, and Carlisle will talk a bit more about that later. And to define, is that a problem or is that not a problem? Does that make some sense? So you've got a hypothesis. We're going to test it by having these customer interviews, and then we're going to look at the results and see, does that make sense? If it doesn't make sense, then we get to practice what Wayne taught us, and that is what we refer to in the field as fluency and flexibility, pivots. If it won't work for the customer segment that you thought you had, then will it work for another customer segment? Does that make some sense? For the scientists in the room, am I reasonably accurate in the method? I am not a scientist. I sure talk with a lot of scientists. So I'm now telling you have to go out and talk to people. How many people like to go out and talk to strangers? This side of the room likes to talk to strangers. Y'all don't. So I've brought with me my friend Pamela Hopkins with ECU's Speech and Communication Center. Oh. I refer to this tool, I just made this up yesterday. You like it? The Lean Launchpad feedback loop, because this is going to kind of cycle through and you'll get more feedback. So, kind of like, isn't that clip art fun? So we're going to go out, we've got these questions, we're going to test the time bomb and see what it's going to come out with. Sometimes we're going to get really frustrated because it's not going to tell us what we want to hear. And that's where Pamela comes in. Yes, because she's going to help guide us in the process of how to do face-to-face customer interviews in a way that gives you meaningful information that you need to listen to. So in our world, we call it active listening.